hit a home run. We both got a point. Over under push was at 1 for Francisco Lindor home runs. We both went over. Lindor just hit 1, so no points awarded as he pushes. Over under push, this was the most interesting one of the week. Lindor hit was at 7. We both went over. Lindor, through the first 3 games of our 6 games on the scoreboard, had 5 hits, but he didn't have a hit after that. So it ends up going under. We don't get a point here. Lindor started out hot. He fizzled a little bit. And listen, he's going to be locked in, though, for the MVP stretch. Over-under push was at 1 for Drew Gilbert home runs. This one is remarkable. In 6 Syracuse games. Joe, you pushed at 1. I went under. I said, you can't keep doing this. He hit 2 home runs. Nobody gets a point. Drew Gilbert is just on an absolute ridiculous home run pace since he's been back. Over-under push was at 4 for Mets wins. Joe, you went over. I pushed. The Mets won 5 games. They stay hot. Big week for you, Joe. You win 4-2 this week. You have the season lead 59-52 for this week. 6 games, 2 against the Jays, 3 against the Phillies, 1 against the Nationals for the scoreboard predictions. Joe, you win the week. You get to start. Yes or no? Will Starling Marte hit at least 1 home run?
I'm starting to look like Jordan Mason on the scoreboard. That's what I'm starting to look like right now. Maybe sore subject.
Tough reference. Yeah, it is what it is. He did help me in fantasy reluctantly.
Yeah. There you go. Well, Starling Marte, I will continue down the trajectory of saying no, he will not hit a home run. Since he's been back, it's a lot of ground balls. He's not really hitting the ball incredibly hard.
No.
So I will continue to go with the no Starling Marte home run. And one of these weeks, he's got to hit one, and I'll take the loss when I take it.
And that's why I'm going to take it. Yes, I have to chase the points that I've lost on this investment. Marte hits at least 1 home run this week. I'll take the yes. The next one, will Francisco Alvarez hit at least 1 home run? I'm going to go no here, Joe. And the issue here is that besides the fact Alvarez hasn't looked right really since he went on the IL a long time ago and came back, he doesn't play every day, right? You could argue Torrens is the best arm behind the plate in the National League right now, which is just remarkable. But it's about opportunity with this one, and the fact that Alvarez hasn't been overly effective as a home run hitter lately. So I'll go no.
I'll also go no, and your point about Torrens is amazing, because if you just look back at his Baseball Savant page over the last couple of years, defensively it hasn't been all that pretty, and this year he's taken huge strides. So that's a credit to him and a credit to Glenn Sherlock, who's the catching instructor, to kind of help him along. But back to Alvarez, I will go no as well on the home run. One thing to watch in his mechanics, when he steps in the bucket, you see him kind of step back. He takes himself out of anything that's not middle in. Anything outside, he's got no shot on. And on occasion is the word I'm trying to say. On occasion, you see him stay in, and when he stays in, then you see him spraying the ball to right center, hitting those hard line drives to right field. So mechanics have been up and down throughout the year, and obviously trying to be healthy. I'll ride with a no on the Alvarez home run as well.
Over under push, Joe, is at 1 for Mark Vientos home runs. What are you going with here?
I'm going to push. I mean, he might hit 2 tonight. We saw that obviously Friday against Cincinnati, the massive walk-off, and that jersey came off like Hulk Hogan style, as you said. But I will push and say he hits a home run the rest of the week, knowing that I think you'll probably go over here and you might take it.
I will go over here for Vientos home runs. He's a guy that can hit him in bunches, chasing some points here, and when he's locked in terms of that power swing, the ball can really, really carry, whether it's opposite field. The pull home run or the walk-off was out of sight immediately. So I will go over for Vientos home runs. Over under pushes at 4 for Jose Iglesias hits. I'm going to push here, Joe, which is the most risky play because you're not giving yourself any pad, but it feels like this number is set right for where Iglesias is at right now. I like the push.
One thing Carlos Mendoza mentioned is they have to be careful with playing time. Even though Iglesias is going to get the bulk of the games at second base, I don't think he's going to play every single day the rest of the stretch, because he has been, a backup player for years at this point. So Eddie Alvarez, the Olympic speed skater, I didn't even know that was in his past. Now he's on the roster and he could play a little bit of middle infield for you. I'll actually go under on the Iglesias hits. I think, he draws walks, and he got hit by the pitch twice in Toronto. So he works at bats where he could make an impact on the game without getting base hits.
That is an insane nugget about Eddie Alvarez, by the way.
Two-time Olympic medalist, baseball and speed skating, but skating was like a decade ago.
That's absolutely ridiculous. What a life. Somebody should make the Netflix doc on Eddie Alvarez at this point. Who, the way things have gone for the Mets this season, Eddie Alvarez is going to have a moment. Hearing you say that Iglesias is going to need some time off.
Him scoring on that wild pitch, like his attentiveness and being on his toes, and really nice slide, like nice play by Eddie there.
All right, over under push is at 3 for Edwin Diaz appearances, Joe. It feels like this is the time of year, and we know he likes to pitch. Diaz is going to be used even in non-save situations.
Which I didn't like not using him in the non-save situation on Saturday. They could have used him Sunday, but we're not going backwards. I will go over. I think the Mets are using Edwin Diaz, like you said, in all different situations, and they could be leading by 4. They could be a save situation. It could be tied in the 9th. They're finding ways to get Edwin Diaz in the game, so I will go over here.
I'll push at 3 for this one. He did pitch in the game that was most recent to our recording, and not that that'll affect, they won't just shut him down after pitching once, but at some point they will need to be a little careful. I could see 3 out of the 6 games. All right, over under push is 4 for Mets wins. Not the easiest schedule. Blue Jays are going to be a tough out these next 2. We know what the Phillies could do, especially at home. 1 against the Nationals. I'm going to say under, surprisingly, Joe. I think the Mets go 3-3 in this stretch. I think the Phillies games are going to be really, really tough, but I also hope this is a reverse jinx where the Mets just end up continuing to surprise everybody.
Hey, if they go 3-3, I know people will lose their minds. That's not the worst possible outcome, obviously, but I will push at 4. I think, I talked about it a few minutes ago. The Mets have a tendency to play up to their competition, so I don't think they're going to go into Philly and get completely beat up. So I will say the Mets go 4-2 with a push over the next 6.
All right, let's close out the show answering your mailbag questions. This first one from Chris Toomey 9256 from YouTube. Question for Connor. How come you didn't think the Mets would make the playoffs before the season started? According to the SNY 2024 MLB season predictions, you didn't even have them getting one of the wild card spots. You had the Giants, D-backs, and the Phillies, but no Mets. I'm actually really glad Chris asked.
Hater. Why?
Because I do have good reasoning that I said when we did our preview show, and this is funny how things work out. I didn't believe in, without Senga the first half of the year, the Mets starting pitching. It was my number one concern. I thought Severino would make 20 starts. I thought Manaea would be closer to a 4.3 ERA. And I was worried about the depth. And to be quite honest with you about the Mets this year, it's been one of the most pleasant surprises. That goes to show you David Stearns knows how to attack that one-year market. What they're doing in their system from a sports science perspective is incredible. I mean, Severino's made 28 starts already. It's been a career year for Manaea. David Peterson, who you and I especially have always really, really liked, we did not see this coming. The fact that Peterson's made 17 starts and has a 2.75 ERA is remarkable. And I know, Joe, we've talked a little bit about the, some of it has not lucky, but Peterson has some fortunate advanced numbers. But at the end of the day, when you've made 17 starts and your raw numbers are that good, like things are going well for you. So yeah, that's the full transparency of why I didn't think the Mets would be able to make the playoffs this year. I thought they were around an 82 win team. I didn't think they had the pitching without Senga, and credit to that group. They have fully proved me wrong, and it's been honestly remarkable to watch, specifically Manaea and Severino. Severino for being healthy, but Manaea for being a guy that at his age to do what he's done and his approach and just listening to him speak, he's been one of maybe my favorite story of the entire Mets season, to be honest with you.
Connor, you had the same concerns that everybody did. I'm just glad because I get all the mean tweets and the mean posts about things I say. I'm glad you get it enough for the NFL draft. It's about time you get you get some Mets heat from the
But
fans.
this was a really nicely worded question.
Yeah. It was nicely worded. And I think, so you had 82 in your official prediction as wins?
I had 82 wins.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I had around 82. I thought they'd be really, really close. Now, if you notice what Chris said there, I had the Phillies as the wild card team because I thought the Braves would win the division.
Naturally, who would have thought? Who would have thought they would have lost their whole roster?
I am not someone that thought the Braves would lose their 4 best players or whatever it is. The Giants have been wildly disappointing, and they sold some big pieces at the deadline, kept some. They've been hovering around, but just not enough. The Diamondbacks are probably going to make it. I'll be honest as well, Joe. I didn't think the Padres would do what they did at the deadline, which to me was borderline insane what they gave up for a bullpen, but they are all in on this season, and they are reaping some benefits of that at the moment.
For sure. And I look back, I had 86 wins and the third wild card for the Mets. I might have undershot their win total. Ain't that something?
Might need more. They might need more at the end of the day for this one. So
they may get more.
And they might get more. So it's no, I love when people bring that up because one, it shows people are paying attention and it's cool. And I love revisiting our predictions and how wrong you could be on like these things that baseball is an incredible game in terms of how difficult it is to predict, specifically pitching, both starting pitching and relief pitching year after year because of the volatility of it. And as it stands right now, the volatility of it has been on the Mets side this year. And man, Joe, after we sat through not even letdown seasons, but really injury-related seasons for so long with such talent, it's nice to come out on the other end of it and have the stories that are so hard to see coming.
It is. So, I mean, we talked about the good stuff about Severino and Manaea and what they could potentially provide, but they've both, especially those two, have exceeded any expectation we could have imagined.
I mean, each guy's probably made themselves, if you were projecting what they would get in spring training, projecting their contract in 2025, there's probably for each of them maybe a $75 million difference right now. That alone, right?
It's going to be huge.
Yeah, probably about a $70-ish million difference compared to the projections. So, and you know what? It's a great look for the Mets because the guys that need to be next year's Luis Severino and Sean Manaea should be looking at the New York Mets and saying, I trust their sports science program. I trust their pitching, not only analytics, but all of the, coaching aspect of it as well. Like, I think Mets fans will focus on the potential of losing those guys. And if that happens, that stinks. But the glass half full, Joe, is that the Mets are now a destination for that kind of play year after year, in my opinion.
Walker Buehler, come on down.
Right. There you go. Perfect example. All right. Richard Frey, 1975, also on YouTube. Are you as excited as I am about our future in the pitching department with Senga back next year, Peterson with 2 years left of control, Christian Scott, Brandon Sproat, and even Paul Blackburn for one more year? Joe, I think Richard makes a good point here. It's not that you're looking at the Mets and going, man, they have it all. But the Mets a year ago or 6 months ago, you go, great, they have to go buy another rotation in the offseason again. And we've gotten away from that. Like there's some names we can write in ink here for next year where they need to go sign some arms, but it's not a barren wasteland after what we've seen this year.
It's not nearly what we expected, right? Because obviously the emergence of Christian Scott in a big way, Brandon Sproat, although he's having an adjustment period here at the AAA level, I still look at him as someone that's going to be involved in the early season conversation next year. Even from a depth perspective, I know they also have had up and down years at AAA Syracuse. I think Mike Vassell and Dom Hamill are going to be added to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, and that makes them depth. Paul Blackburn, perfectly respectable back-end starter. The Mets can decide what Tyler McGill's role is in 2025. Do they want to keep him as a starter? Do they want to transition to the bullpen now? Because you kind of have to decide. I think he, more so than anyone, you have to decide what is Tyler McGill, because the starting thing is wildly inconsistent. Can his stuff tick up in shorter shorter outings, higher leverage spots. I'd be interested to look at that. And a name that wasn't mentioned, Jose Buto's got to find his way back to starting pitching next year. I appreciate what he was able to provide this year for the bullpen when they sorely needed it because they couldn't trust a guy to get an outside of Edwin Diaz, and Buto bridged that gap for quite a bit of time. But I think he is a starting pitcher, so I think you move him back into the rotation. And then, of course, there's going to be opportunities with free agents, whether that is at the top of the market, a Corbin Burns or a Max Fried, which we'll get into that in the offseason, how I don't want to do that stuff. Yeah. But it's an option, the short-term guys, and then, of course, some arms coming through the farm. Jonah Tong, we talked about earlier in the show, he's going to start in Double-A, and all it takes is start really hot in Double-A, call it to Triple-A, and a need arises. So I am very excited about where the Mets pitching is at long-term because of Jeremy Hefner, because of Eric Jagers and the pitching development staff that they have. These arms are going to keep coming. I have a lot of confidence in that. So I think this is a very good point.
All right. Right off the heel of that, a good question from Twitter from Dale's Pale Ale. What is the most realistic role for Kodai Senga if he comes back this season? This is picking up a little steam, Joe. SNY's Andy Martino, I believe a week ago, had a piece on this that there's some optimism building around Senga pitching this year, specifically if the Mets make the playoffs, although I don't know if it could be sooner than that. I don't think the Mets even know. But I think what we do know, Joe, is that if Senga comes back this season, he's not coming back to throw 6 or 7 innings in a start. It feels like it would be some kind of hybrid role, and maybe that's where McGill comes back into play, Joe.
So I talked about this. I was on Mets Off Day Live last week with Keith Rad and Chelsea Sherrod, and we talked about this kind of exact situation. Senga has said that he is targeting September 25th, which is the first day that he's eligible to return from the 60-day IL, as his return date. And he's, willing to do whatever the Mets want him to do, saying the right things. I'll tell you this, I don't think Kodai Senga is someone you could put in the bullpen. He is someone that is so particular with everything, and he needs that extra rest as a starter. Like if he throws 1 inning today, how many days does he need before he could throw an inning again? So I think the play with Senga is bringing back minor league baseball, right? Senga starts the game, he pitches 3 to 4 innings, and you piggyback him with a Jose Quintana, a Tyler McGill, a David Peterson, because that's going to be an interesting conversation, Connor. If the Mets do make the playoffs, the wild card is 3 games. Who are your 3 starters? Are you somebody's got to miss? And I would think Minaya and Severino have earned opportunities. Are you going to start Peterson over Senga, or do you go with a Senga starts, Peterson comes in after him? So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it. But by all accounts, it seems Kodai Senga is, on schedule. And I know his shoulder injury, it felt like he was behind schedule essentially at all times. Seems like he's on schedule. He's throwing bullpens, lives. He's getting ready, and he targets, the Atlanta series. So wouldn't that be something? Kodai Senga back off the IL to start a game, even if it's 3 to 4 innings, in the most crucial series probably of the Mets season.
What's fascinating to me, Joe, with that discussion, because I think the logic's like somebody just driving in their car right now is going, well, yeah, that's what you would do. Minaya, Severino, Kodai Senga with a potential quick hook to Peterson. One, I don't know if that puts Peterson in the best spot, but you got to roll with it. What's interesting to me is Senga in his rookie season in 2023, his worst inning by far was the first inning. By far. He allowed a 7.17 OPS in the first inning. His ERA was 4.34. His ERA from the 4th to 6th inning was well below a 3. And his ERA in the 2nd and 3rd innings was right around a 3. He's hit by far. His worst inning is the first inning. It's not even close. Now,
so maybe you flip him. I mean, maybe
I don't
that's
know.
The play.
Right, but but is it just settling in? does it not matter? Like if you put Senga in the fourth, is it like the fourth inning wasn't great, but now he's settling?
The fourth is the first, right?
Right. I don't know this equation, and I'm kind of playing devil's advocate with you here because I think at the end of the day, logic would tell you if Senga's healthy after Minaya and Severino get their starts, that's how you would set it up because Peterson has earned it. He really has. And you know what? Let me say this, Joe, why I'm not worried about it sitting here. I trust Carlos Mendoza to make the right decision because every time he's had to make a feel decision while using the analytics as a foundation, it feels like he's batting on the high end of making the right decision.
Yeah. Mendoza, and I'm sure somebody has many things to complain about, but he feels like he's batting 750. He feels like he's playing slow pitch. Feels like he's playing slow pitch softball here, not managing Major League Baseball. So I am totally with you. And the Mendoza thing didn't even enter my mind. I think that's a great point. I trust Mendoza, and obviously collaborating with David Stearns and the analytics department and Jeremy Hefner to put the team in the best position to win. And if that's Senga starting, Peterson behind him, flipping them, whatever the case may be, I think the exciting thing here is that we are talking about Kodai Senga, despite everything he's been through this year, potentially being a factor for a Mets playoff team in 2024. Couldn't have convinced Connor in spring training, I could tell you that much.
No, nothing was getting through to me. And boy, I could not be happier that we're sitting here the second week of September, and the Mets are playing their best baseball, and they're right in the thick of a playoff chase here. All right, let's close out quickly with a fun one, Joe, from Steve Miller. You got to win the last game of the year. What's your lineup and starting pitcher for the game? And we could play this that the Mets are lining this up in advance, so we could pick any pitcher we want for the last game. We can't do the whole, well, this guy might not be rested and whatever. I think undeniably the pitcher's Minaya, right, Joe?
I don't know. Okay. So Minaya has had the best year. So I think that's a very logical statement. I'm going gut feel here. I feel like Luis Severino is made for the big game. Everything's on the line. You see how juiced up Severino gets when he strikes these guys out. I just have this weird feeling that Severino would step up, but if you went Minaya, I don't think you'd be going wrong. He's been unbelievable and has pitched himself into someone that's going to be looked at like a front end-ish type of starter this offseason.
All right, so let's just assume, to keep it more consistent with what you'd expect, they're going against a righty for the lineup. I think the two in ink are Lindor and Vientos, 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to mess with that?
No,
so Lindor and Vientos.
Yeah.
Now, what you do at 3, to me, is the question. Because Brandon Nimmo is having the worst month of his career and plenty of time to turn it around. I'm not just putting Nimmo in the 3 hole in this game like they like to do.
Yeah. I feel like Jesse Winker's my 3 hole hitter. Against right-handed pitching, he gets on base. If he doesn't get hits, he gets on base. And then I guess even though it hasn't worked out very much with runners in scoring position, I feel like you just have to bat Pete, clean up.
I still agree. I agree.
I think 5. Do you go Nimmo 5? And then
yes,
and then
because it's
6?
a righty. If it was a lefty, it would be JD.
Yeah.
It's Nimmo. I think it's Nimmo 5, JD 6. So this is where I'm going to get a little creative. Marte, I might bat Iglesias 9th to try to do the double leadoff guy thing.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think it's Marte 7, and then we're debating between Bader. Oh no, we can't have Marte and Winker and JD. They can't all play.
No, they can't all play. So you'd put Winker in right field, and you'd eventually bring in Marte for him.
I'd probably bring in Tyrone Taylor for him. I would. Marte's job that game is pinch hitting for Jesse Winker late and trying to steal a base, and then for defense, Tyrone Taylor goes out in right. So you have Iglesias and Bader down near the bottom. So I'm okay with Iglesias in the 9 hole, and Alvarez 7. I guess
Alvarez is 7. The only problem with that is JD does get on base, and then are you just are you just setting up a double play situation over and over again for yourself? That's why I might go Bader and then Alvarez instead.
And then
Bader's got more speed, and then Iglesias.
I'm fine with that. I think ultimately those bottom three, like Iglesias has had the best year, so theoretically get him the most at bats, but maybe he makes sense in the 9 hole for that given day. Either way, I look at that lineup and I go, Mets could win that game. I feel pretty good about the Mets' chances. So good, fun question. And honestly, I don't know if my heart could take it. So let's just hope we don't have to live this reality in that game at Milwaukee after everything that went on Milwaukee to start the season. I don't need that in my life.
To me, there's nothing more insane in sports than playing 161 baseball games and somehow everything comes down to the 162nd game. Like the chances of that happening just seem so absurd. And folks, we live in a world where we could be facing that this season.
I mean, honestly,
I think the Mets are going to take care of business for that, which I know is insane. Me, not Mr. Positive. I really am that confident in this team.
I feel good about where the Mets are. I feel like that the last maybe 2 days, the last day or two of the season, I feel like we're not going to know who the wild card teams are with like 2 games left. So I think it's just going to be a crazy next couple of weeks. So strap in, buckle up, whatever term you like to use. Get ready, because this is what pennant race baseball is all about. And as crazy and stressful as it is, would have signed up for this 100 times out of 100 when we were having our spring training show down in Port St. Lucie.
100%. We'll be here for all of it. This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. Remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. Leave us a review with the question, and we'll look for it for a future mailbag like we did today, of course. You could also watch the show on SNY's YouTube channel. You can leave a question over there as well. Become a subscriber. You will never miss a show. Thanks so much.